From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hey, it's Charlie Matos, and in this episode, we sit down with Jason Boland. After more than 20 years together, Jason Boland and the Stragglers were getting set to make their Grand Ole Opry debut. They also had a brand new album out. We would talk about both of those important events in the life of Jason Boland. This was recorded December the 7th of 2021 at our Magnolia Lobby studio at the Gaylord Opryland Resort and Convention Center. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with Jason Boland.
Jason Boland and the Stragglers, congratulations and welcome to Coffee, Country, and Cody.
Thanks for having me.
A 20-year run with the band. Is that how long you've been out there?
Something like that. Yeah, we put out our first one in January 2000. It helps us keep track.
You played Huntsville last night.
Yeah.
So you've been up. I said, how long you been in town? He said, minutes.
Yeah.
How long you been up? He said, second cup.
Yeah, working on it. Yeah.
So where does this, Oklahoma, I believe, is home for you, isn't it?
That was the origin. I live down in South Central Texas now, down around New Braunfels, and we're all scattered out. I always say we're from I-35.
I know it well.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in Comfort while I worked in San Antonio for years.
Then you know it. And it's
absolutely
brutal. It just gets worse day by day. They don't ever fix anything. They just make new construction there. So they just pretty soon it'll all be under construction.
Well, we're going to feature the title track from The Light Saw Me coming out. People see the video, too. Does this fall under concept album?
Yes.
As I was listening to it?
Yeah.
And what's the concept for people who may not have heard it yet?
People have backed away from it a little bit because it's about extraterrestrials and a guy being teleported through time, basically. But, I mean, when you break it down, it's really just a bunch of country music about the things that humans all live through and the questions that we all have. And there's a love story in there.
Who's your narrator on the voiceover stuff?
His name's Ken Lane from Desert Oracle Radio out of Joshua Tree. And he's just a fabulous dude. He's a writer, podcaster, radio show host, and just a desert weirdness enthusiast.
I was telling both Charlie and Eric, I said, yeah, you're listening, and all of a sudden this narration comes on, and I was transported back to like the futuristic television shows, a Twilight Zone kind of a moment where there was a voiceover in there, and these Orwellian sort of things were going on, and I was like, well, I didn't see that coming because I didn't, I purposely didn't read ahead. I just put it in, and that tends to be the way I want to listen to stuff with any artist. And then I started looking at credits and liners and things like that. So.
It was a lot of fun. I think all bands have in the back of their mind, one day we'll do the concept album, or if you're a rock band, I always say you're going to do a country album. If you're a country album, do your rock album, whatever. Yeah. Everybody has these grand schemes, but to really tie into one and think, hey man, once we start this, there's no more wink, and there's no more we're in this, and you have a narrative that you have to carry. You have a plot basically that can have holes poked in it, and you can get away with that with some. We weren't going to make it a total narrative of and this happened and this happened and this happened. There's a lot of metaphor going in there too, but it was a lot of fun, and Shooter Jennings produced it, and he had already done his own stint with his concept albums. So we got in there, and where you would think a lot of what we were dealing with would be the constraints of you have to work within this now. It really gave us the focus for me. Once you had the outline laid out, it was fun to get in there and get to work on it.
In country and Western, as Ray Benson would say, because there's cowboy at the heart of this whole thing. Right?
Yeah. And there's a pedal steel on the album.
Go figure.
Fiddle,
Yeah. Tommy White at the Grand Ole Opry is smiling from ear to ear.
Tommy White will be so happy.
A steel guitar Hall of Famer and an Opry staff member.
Yeah, I thought, I think it made sense. And when you go back and you look through, all the different concept albums that people have done from Terry Allen and Willie Nelson.
I was going to ask you if Red-Headed Stranger was an influence on it.
That was one of the ones, because I also wanted to see if you could fit it in our concept. The time change happens when you turn over a vinyl. So we wanted to make it to where the past would be side one and his relative future would be side two. So fit it in that much without compressing it, and try to, get it to work out just the way the time would. So it really worked out. It was fun. It was right at the end when we were doing the listen down, I thought, oh gosh, what if there's something crazy we're going to have to change? We got these narrations and all this, but it really. Are
you going to be beamed up at any point during your performance at the Grand Ole Opry?
We have a guy on the backdrop that does. he just stays there beamed up the whole time. So, but I don't think we're going to drop that. You know, everybody always has so-and-so was the first one to get that on the Opry. You know, they never had horns, you know, before Marty Robbins, whatever, all that stuff. We'll be the first one to bring in some big obnoxious backdrop.
Well, big obnoxious drums with Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, as I remember.
Yeah. Ernest Tubbs and the electric guitar. Thank you, Tyler Mahan Co. for hipping me to that.
Well, the Opry debut of Jason Boland and the Stragglers later on tonight, and I'll be there to host. It's great to have him in studio debuting with us this morning on Coffee, Country, and Cody.
And you mentioned 20 years or 21 now since the first album for you guys. Well, you know, the Kentucky Headhunters just debuted after like 30 years on Saturday night. Is that
You're
not crazy?
Kidding me.
Yeah. So it's been quite the week at the Grand Ole Opry.
Richard says back when they were having hits, the problem was the length of their hair.
Well, there's this little phenomenon that goes on that when people start asking you about, you know, where you are in your career and how you see these things, well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? And you look back and you say, some of these bands that they were all calling us outlaw country, they picked that label because it was a bunch of people that didn't really follow all the rules very well. And so anytime you want to put somebody in something, but it all works out. They find out that we play nice ultimately.
Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM.
And Jason Boland, the Stragglers, making their way to the Grand Ole Opry for their debut in just a few hours, and in studio with us on Coffee, Country, and Cody this morning. So take me back to Stillwater, Oklahoma State, and the very early days. Is that where the music started for you?
Yeah, for that little part of our genre, that was a big area for it to land on. It was about, I guess 94 when I moved up there, 93, and then it was about 95 when I started running into these songwriters that were playing these bars, and they were playing songs that you'd never heard before, you know, and you hadn't heard them on the radio or anything. And there was a place called The Farm outside of town where they all hung out, and you get invited out there, especially once they found out you were a musician, and everybody just wanted to sit around and play and pick and write songs. And they approached it from a standpoint of this was something real. This wasn't just something that you could, you know, some dreamy thing. It's like, if you enjoy playing music, go do it. And I was one of those folks that went to college not knowing what I wanted to do.
I was going to ask you what your major was.
Yeah, it was just College of Business, and let's see if we can get a degree.
Because you were talking about your love of history off the air a little bit.
Yeah, but you can't get a job having history or philosophy.
You can go teach it.
I know. It's always, and they would always say, they always compared it. You remember they'd call everything underwater basket weaving. Like, why don't you just go take underwater basket weaving? You know, and it's like, well, then what do you want me to do? I don't know, finance major. You know, that sounds great. That sounds like
what did your folks do?
They were supportive, really. I think it was one of those too. They were watching the grades.
What was their occupation? What did they do professionally?
Oh, what did they do?
Yeah.
A travel pay clerk on Tinker Air Force Base and a phone man for Southwestern Bell.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So just hardworking folks. Grew up in a little town called Harrah, Oklahoma, which is just dead center of the state pretty much, and dead center of America. And that's exactly what it was. It was just a very middle of America place to be from, and you can imagine everything that comes with that.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt has a major you would have loved: human and organizational development.
There you go.
Now, how's that for the vaguest thing on the planet?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There was one of the only guy who had the lease at the place I mentioned, the farm, Danny. He was a recreation major.
So, is that like PE?
I think it had.
We call it recreation.
It had a little more like outdoor,
like
title,
parks and recreation.
Yeah, it was a little more like that. But yeah, the title was I'm a recreation major. It was like, yes, you're great at it.
And was there Garth afterglow when you were there for the songwriting community to see what had happened with this guy?
Oh yeah, because Tom Skinner and the rest of the members of his band were still around there and playing, and you saw a person that had just been on the stage at Willie's, and then
Eskimo Joe's.
Yeah, and you saw what they did. So there was an afterglow, and there was that point of, we still go back to that. Where are we with how we push things in a market economy, which is what we do, and how do you be successful doing that, and how do you preserve what we're doing here? And I think you see all genres of music always struggling with that. Like, how do you take it to that many people and then still keep it personal and regional and tasty? It's a lot like food. I end up comparing music to food a lot. And you have that one restaurant that it's the greatest place in the world, and they put the second one across town, and it's still great too. And about the time they hit the fourth one, you start like, it's not what it used to be, And then it goes national and it gets bought up, and you're like, oh, you should have seen it back in the day. And I think we've always tried to keep that going, from wanting to be as successful as you can and take it as far as somebody like Garth did, and then how would you keep what you always found special about music and touring and playing music for people, within the confines of what you still find fun and doable, and to live a normal life while doing it.
Well, your business model has led you to the stage of the Grand Ole Opry.
Well, it did.
In just a few hours.
Yeah.
Your debut. Congratulations. Thank you for coming to see us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jason Boland and the Stragglers later tonight. This is From the White Saw Me, Restless Spirits on WSM and Circle Television. Good morning.
I was walking down the alley when I heard this music coming through the screen.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tittle. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Matos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.